And then finally, just for our training, we are right now in the midst of, we've identified our team trainers because, as you know, this summer there's a mandatory one-day training for all evaluators of administrators, and that comes at the tail end of the teacher evaluation training. So there's 2 days of teacher evaluation training and 1 day for all principal or administrator evaluators, and there's a mandatory training as well as the certification test that they would take. That's for the summer, and that's what you see listed on the slide. What we're also really intentional about is for next year, 14-15, because we know that in 1 day it's not possible to really go deep and provide the kind of training. So we're being very intentional about, through the core offices and through our regions, to be planning additional training, both for those being evaluated, like assistant principals, and then also those that have gotten the 1 day training in the summer. And we'll roll that out across every one of the 8 core regions for 14-15. Because we really believe this has to be ongoing. I think as Sarah mentioned, this is not a process, especially around principal performance, that covers a lot of different areas in the building, that training has to really be comprehensive and ongoing, especially for supervisors and especially for directors of schools, since they are the ones evaluating too. Yeah, so we're going to be pretty intentional about what that training looks like and sounds like for 14-15 too.
And that's all we have. I'm happy to take any, Paul, too, additional questions that you have. I have a brief slide to update you on leader prep review. But are there any other questions that you have for us on the principal evaluation work?
How about going back and talk a little bit more about the input from the teachers, feedback from the teachers, and how that's being used, how you anticipate using that, and what value you see in that.
Yeah, because I don't.
And maybe even extend that a little bit to how you're doing the same thing with students.
Yeah, once you start with a teacher and then
yeah, and I think, we all probably know for principals, it can be sometimes even more isolating than being a teacher in terms of getting feedback. And often in districts, those supervisors coming out of those directors, because of their busyness and their busy schedules, it's hard for principals to get good feedback about their performance, about their areas of strength and areas that they need to grow in. And so that's where this piece, I think, can really step in and allow teachers anonymously, almost like the Tell Tendency survey, to give really targeted feedback that evaluators like supervisors can take and then have good conversations with principals about. And principals can use it for themselves because it's not at this point, 5% of their evaluation or 10%. So it's a feedback tool that right now is kind of the missing link, because it's hard for principals, and they're hungry for it. They want more feedback, but they often don't get it in the current landscape, current structure.
I think the other thing, just to add, in terms of this tool, I think it's particularly helpful, is that it's aligned completely with the TIL standards themselves. So it goes through in the various areas of leadership that we're attempting to focus people on. It asks teachers how they would assess their principal against those standards. So it's very specific and I think actionable for a principal who's looking, at how they're performing across these different leadership standards to see how their staff is rating them essentially across those areas of leadership. It's a very kind of simplified, straightforward tool. You'd like it.
Yeah, sure.
But the thing I'm kind of missing is how that is incorporated in that feedback.
Into the evaluation process.
Incorporated into the evaluation. Is it just?
Yeah. So in our pilot,
factor.
in our pilot districts, they're going to use it when they sit down with principals at the end of the year here, because the survey window has been open and it closes tomorrow, in fact. And then in our 10 pilot districts, they're going to take that, and then when they sit down in June with the kind of that summative, that feedback will help kind of inform the conversations they're having, and probably even help inform that summative scoring, even though it doesn't count as a specific percentage. So I think in the media, that's what's coming. We've even had some pilot districts say they want to use it as kind of use it at the beginning of the year and let teachers take it. Not that they want to survey, not that they want to over survey the teachers, but to use it as kind of a beginning and the end of the year for next year.
But then when you look on the rubric, Chairman, in terms of the evidence and the outcomes, that would be one of the sources of evidence that as you're assessing a principal against these standards, you would look to see how they performed on the perception survey, if that's a tool that you've chosen to use. So it would add to the evidence basis that you would use to kind of rate a principal if you're the superintendent or the supervisor.
It just seems to me that that's such an important piece of information that more time believing that there is more important information.
I would completely agree. And it's kind of to Teresa's point. I mean, I think we'll see how this evolves. You know, there's always some, feelings of anxiety around introducing a new tool, and especially if it's evaluative. And because the rubric is new, I think it's important that people be able to use it initially, as a support tool. And we'll see. It could have the natural evolution like the student surveys where, again, that was just used as an informational piece initially. Now some districts are using it at 5%. So I could imagine that same kind of trajectory for this tool. But again, just trying to kind of take the appropriate steps in terms of sequencing, because I think it is important to get that feedback. And once people get that feedback, then it may be a natural evolution. And we'll be keeping you up to speed on that conversation. And certainly you can push us in that direction if you think that's the direction that it should go. We'll come back to you with that.
What, just, and this is a side issue, but our experience with the student feedback, is that being useful, productive?
I think so. In a similar way, students are in classrooms more than anyone, and if you can harness their input in a way that's unbiased and fair to the teacher, it can provide some really contextual feedback. And I think the other thing that's exciting there is that it's for all teachers. It's not just the teachers who already have individual growth measures, but the teachers particularly who don't. This is another individual form of feedback that they can receive. So we have roughly 25 districts that are using it currently, and most of them are using it as 5% of the overall evaluation. In terms of administration, to again make sure it's unbiased and fair, it's like administering a state test. So there's security protocols, there's administration protocols, and so we've been working with the districts that are using it to make sure all of those things are really clear and that there's no bugs in terms of how we execute the survey. So I think we'll see that uptick as more districts find it to be useful, but the districts that have been using it, I think, have found it to be a really important additional source of feedback for teachers.
Okay. Well, I guess my experience would suggest that that the feedback you get from both students and teachers is a lot more effective and useful than sometimes we would expect it to be.
Yep. My experience does the same. They know.
I think it's a very important source of information for both principals and teachers. So make sure we're making both effective use of it.
Absolutely. Other questions on the...
Any other questions on the principal evaluation process model? Anything? I guess it's really important work, and I can continue to be impressed that you can walk into a school and pretty quickly determine whether that school's got a good principal or not. Just normal operation to make sure that we're getting the appropriate feedback from the principals, how they're doing, what they need to work on is certainly an important part of the education process.
We certainly agree.
Any other questions, comments? Okay.
Okay. Last thing I wanted, I've got one last slide, and it continues the theme of leadership, because I think it also is really important that we think about how our leaders are being prepared across the state. And so just wanted to give you a brief update. Again, this is all within current policy, so no actions required, but you may know we have 19 leader prep programs currently in our state. And under the 2008 Learning Centered Leadership policy, when that was redesigned, all of those programs were conditionally approved. And we've been working with Dr. Nixon and Dr. Sevier over the last year, really, to kind of determine what's the appropriate course of additional review for these programs, knowing that we are also in a time at which we're about to pivot and take on a different approach, more outcome-driven approach for teacher and leader preparation. So what I'm about to explain briefly to you is kind of an interim review process that we have worked again with the state board staff to put in place and to implement over the next 6 to 9 months, so that we can bring to you full recommendations for approval of those 19 programs next January. Knowing that, again, this is going to continue to evolve, and we wanted a process that would start to point these programs to a more outcome-driven approach, which is, again, where we believe we're going, and we'll have more discussion of that at the July meeting when we bring to you the recommendations for teacher preparation changes. But essentially, this interim strategy would kind of push in that direction by gathering some key points of evidence. Yeah, that's right. From these programs to the extent to which they are really addressing the new instructional leadership standards. And so there's 4 areas that we're going to be gathering evidence initially to perform this interim review. The first is their partnership with districts. We know that that's a critical component to a highly effective leadership prep program, is working closely with the district partner and also looking at selection criteria. So how are they working with districts to select the people coming into the program? How are they thinking about the evidence for a potential candidate performance post-program? Do they have the signs of a potentially effective leader, and are they taking that into consideration when they select candidates to their program? The third is the preparation curriculum itself, and we'll do some review of some of the work that they've done to align their curriculum. We don't intend to do a lot of syllabi review and get into the weeds, but more kind of understand the changes that they're making to their program writ large to address these new leadership standards. And then the fourth area is around the clinical experience, because again, we believe that that's a critical component. And how are they ensuring that their candidates are getting really robust clinical experiences? And that, again, connects back to the partnership with the district. You know, that's really the only way that that's possible, is if they're working really closely with the districts that they're serving. So in the coming months, and this is the slide, this speaks to this, we're going to be informing programs and working with them to prepare them for this evidence collection. We'll be collecting that evidence and reviewing it with review teams that includes both, K-12 practitioners and leaders, as well as department staff and some representatives from our preparation programs. And then as we are reviewing that evidence, we'll share outcomes with the leader prep programs and bring those outcomes to you at the January meeting with recommendations for full approval or approval with stipulations. So if we see a program that, again, we bring to you with stipulations, that will trigger some additional evidence collection and potentially site visits. That's kind of how we intend to think about this interim period where we're moving to a new process over the next few years with the CAPE standards and with some other changes to teacher prep, but want to make sure that our leader prep programs, in the meantime, are getting some guidance and some feedback, as well as being able to establish full approval if we think that evidence points us in that direction. Happy to take questions if you have them about this, and I don't know if Dr. Nixon or Dr. Sevier want to speak to this either, because I've been working closely with them on this as well.
I have one kind of related question as it relates to the report card, that is done for teacher prep programs based on outcomes. Do you anticipate a similar report card that would be for the leader preparation programs as well?
Yes, and thank you for mentioning that, Tricia. I failed to mention it, but it's on the slide there. We're working with THEC. They do intend to release to districts, to programs, this leader prep study this year. The data is not as clean for leader prep and how do you make connections between the preparation program and where people are actually acting as principals. But we're going to be working with THEC to use that data as part of this review process, and they are working to have a public-facing leader report card, whether it's this year or next year. They're still determining.
So it will be part of the approval process, ultimately?
The data that informs our report card, it won't be exactly one-for-one, but just like the teacher prep report card, we intend to use a lot of that data to inform the approval process for teacher prep. It'll be a very similar process with leaders.
Okay, other comments or questions? Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Appreciate the good work. Another important effort is we're Joey here. Joey's here. Okay. We're running a little bit ahead of schedule. We thought maybe Joey wouldn't be here yet, but he is, so we will not take a break. We will stay on task here. Welcome, Joey.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Occupational diploma progress.
All right, I'm actually going to just set just an overview of where we are with the occupational diploma, and then turn this over to Ty Hodak, who's our Director of Instructional Programming for Special Populations. Last spring, the General Assembly passed a law saying that in addition to a full diploma and a certificate of attendance and the special education diploma, that we would develop an occupational diploma for students with disabilities. So that information made its way to to Gary and the staff here at the State Board, and we connected with Gary Davis and Scott and worked through some things, formed a task force, which you'll see within the policy. We've held 4 meetings over the course of this year, and we came up with the proposed rule revision for first reading for you to look at. The proposed rule revision as written, all of the pieces have been there in the past in relation to the special education diploma, with the exception of item number 4. And item number 4 talks about the skills that we would look for in order for a student to receive an occupational diploma within the special education category. So when we brought the task force together, we shared with the task force that, one, this is not a regular high school diploma because it does not meet the minimum requirements for the student to receive a high school diploma. We struggled at first with the fact that we did not want this to become a way to lower expectations for our students with disabilities. So the task force, along with Scott, has been very involved over the last several months, and Ty's team met and developed the information that Ty is going to share with you. We have met 4 times with the task force, a lot of engagement. We do have one additional round of information that we're going to gather prior to second reading in June or July with the State Board. And the ARC of Tennessee is actually going to work with us to do grand division meetings with business leaders to talk about the information that we're sharing in regard to this diploma option for special ed students. The way this is written, this would not be considered for a student until the end of 10th grade. We believe strongly that we should not make decisions for students in 7th or 8th grade that limit opportunities for them to graduate with a regular high school diploma. So this option would not come into play until after 10th grade, and that's when the information that Ty is going to share will flow into that process, and I'll be around for questions after Ty's presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Ty?
Joey always takes my thunder.
I'm just kidding.
Well, I did.
So actually, as Joey kind of outlined, we began meeting with the task force and trying to set expectations or norms around what this occupational diploma would actually be, and that it would not be a regular diploma, and that it would kind of be a certification that would enhance the outcomes for these students that are not on track for the general education diploma, and it could not be determined until the end of the 10th grade year. So as we worked through those norms and those expectations, we kind of tried to work through what population of students are we talking about, where does this fall. In the beginning, it was for our significant population, the 1%, or the students that were on an alternate assessment. We thought that's where the expectation would have lied. But the group really shared a lot of concerns about the population of students that we would be missing if that was the only students that we considered. So you do have a graph in front of you that kind of demonstrates what it is that they were thinking relative to all the concerns. And so we were talking about this population, but there's this population in the middle of students that are not on track to receive a general education diploma, yet don't have those skills necessary to be employed once they get the special education diploma. So that's really a large population that we weren't thinking about or looking at, as Joey said, because we didn't want to lower expectations. But with all the information that was taken in at the task force, we did determine that there is this population that it would still be acceptable for, but not till the end of the 10th grade year. So I kind of wanted to back you up to those decisions that were made by the task force. After we got through those pieces, we began looking at what do employers expect from students that leave school. And we ran across these 21st century skills, which is kind of like the buzzword, right? 21st century skills, and what is under 21st century skills. And you have hard skills, soft skills, and actually work experience. So we kind of dug into that as the task force. We looked into what are soft skills needed by students to be employable, what are hard skills, and then what kind of work experience do we need to make this successful and enhance the outcomes for these students. So with that said, Joey went over the policy, so we actually went to revising the policy based on that, and then we kind of looked at questions to consider around how are we raising the expectations for this population of students that are already in this particular group. And so we believe over time, the expectations for this group will increase. So this is not meant to be, the document I'll be sharing with you today is not meant to be one that will be stagnant. It's actually the skills we hope will increase, and I'll share with you what I mean by that. And that we want to raise the expectations even for these students over a period of time, and we feel that that will happen with other frameworks that are moving forward with RTI and instructionally appropriate IEPs around this population of students as well. So in the group, and you can look at the schema here, this document here that was developed. In the task force, they determined what skills are necessary, like I said, the hard skills and soft skills, and the experience that's needed, and that's represented in this here. So we worked through all of these pieces to try to determine what was necessary for students, and that's kind of what's in the packet. So there is required skills, and then there's critical skills for students that are needed, and then there are some that we consider preferred or enhanced skills that are kind of like the icing on the cake for students to have. And so with this, the hope is students can take this to employers and show them. In fact, I have actually went through this experience, and I have these skills and this knowledge and this work experience, and it's kind of almost like a curriculum vitae or like another piece of information for employers to look at. So that was developed in the task force. And kind of the next step, the piece that was missing out of this is that engagement of so we looked at all the information around 21st century skills by employers, but we want to engage with employers to actually make sure that our tool is representative of what they actually need. So the ARC of Tennessee has agreed to have 9 meetings with businesses throughout the regions to actually go through what does it mean to have employable skills, what does it mean to come with work experience, and make sure that our tool is actually aligned with the experiences that were developed by the task force. So that will be taking place throughout May and June, and hopefully we'll have all the information by the end of June or July to make sure our tool aligns. And then next year we plan to pilot this in schools, volunteer pilot schools, and kind of tweak this tool as needed throughout the process of engaging business leaders and pilot schools. So, any questions?
Any questions?
I think so. I still am not really sure who will qualify to be in this category.
Sure. Okay, so on the second page of the policy, the proposed rule, it's students who have not met the requirements for high school diploma. It's students who have satisfactorily completed their IEP. So we're talking about students who do have special education services IEP. We have satisfactory record of attendance. And then 4 is where the occupational diploma comes in. And this is those skills that are going to enhance those outcomes for those students to actually be employable. So it's their work experience and all the skills that they've developed over time throughout the end of their 10th grade through their 12th grade year and beyond if they need more time to do so. But this is what's going to go to employers to actually enhance number 1 through 3. Number 1 through 3 is what's needed for the special ed diploma.
Some districts have in the past done a great job of doing the work kinds of activities for the same population.
Mm-hmm.
Did you use some of their work?
Actually, yes, we did, so thank you for bringing that up. Actually, some of the people that were on our task force, Pat Bean's one of them, she actually came from Mississippi. They had a similar program there that they used, and we actually took a lot of their tools that were developed from other states, New York, North Carolina, and all those other states, including people on our task force and what they've done in their school system to actually look at this tool and make sure it would be usable. So there were special ed directors, teachers included in the task force, as well as parents and advocates. So
then at the school level, at the individual student level, who completes this?
So it will actually be the teacher and the student themselves.
Which teacher?
The special education teacher. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hi, just to be clear for everybody, so students who get an occupational diploma, don't count in the graduation numbers that are part of the accountability system, right?
That's correct. So there's no reason why districts would want to push students in this direction, and instead it's opposite. We're trying to raise the expectation for those students who are already going to have this experience. So they're not in, at the end of their 10th grade year, they're not on track to receive the regular diploma. There's no incentive for school districts to use this as a way.
Is there a way, though, that we can encourage those districts and schools to celebrate the achievement and accomplishment of this diploma for those students in a more formal manner?
So I hope so. And I think that we will be developing that throughout the pilot pieces of this. I think the ideas behind that is more along the line of enhancing the outcomes for these students, and that's kind of what the selling factor is as we're raising expectations.
It enhances the diploma.
What's that?
It enhances the diploma.
Right.
If the community knows that it's recognized by that community.
And that's what we're trying to make more solid with the business community, is saying, okay, here's what we've come up with, and we've engaged certain members of the business community already in this, and actually looked at what employers have said, but actually taking this tool to them and saying, okay, so now if these students come to you with this, is this what you're looking for? Will you accept this? Does this help with understanding whether they are employable, or within your organization where that student actually fits in? So what skills they have that can match with places in your business. So yes, we are very hopeful that it will be more of a celebration for those students and not looked at as something additional, which is why it's an easy tool to use for students and teachers to fill out along the way. And the expectations are much higher than that of just the special education diploma. So the expectation would be that they have more skills and are more prepared for employment than if they just had the special education diploma alone.
Well, the other piece of that is that those skills have to have been developed during those high school years.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I love that point, because a part of our trying to raise the expectation is that knowledge piece. And I think our task force, and realistically this has been something that I think has been in place for this population of students for a long time, that the expectations weren't even as high as what we thought that they should be for this population of students. And so eventually over time you'll know it says critical, preferred, enhancing. We're hoping those preferred and enhancing skills will be moved up to critical, but it's going to take some time with the implementation of the other pieces that we're moving with right now. You know, that skills will actually be increased for students, so our expectations will be higher even for this. So, do you want to
say that there's the requirement in there also for 2 years of work experience, which we would expect that would be through our work-based learning program. We have been encouraging more schools through the transition process to incorporate work-based learning into their systems for their students with more significant disabilities. So not only do you have the skills, but you're going to, at the back of the packet, there's a place that will list all of the jobs that the individual has had, all of the placements, and then there is a place for the employer to initial and say, these are the skills that I saw in that student also.
Thank you, Sam.
What percent of our total population would we expect to receive the occupational diploma?
Currently in Tennessee, we have roughly 117,000 students with disabilities. Of the 117,000, students that are clearly identified with intellectual disability is slightly over 7,000. So that population falls within the group that has been in the alternative assessment. So, when we looked at this, we focused slowly on about 1% of our students. But with the addition here, it's that 2 to 3% that we felt like we weren't capturing. They weren't graduating high school, yet there wasn't a good transitional plan for them. So
roughly 2 to 3% total. And when we think expectations of students, and this is something we struggle with across the state when we meet with our gen ed partners quite a bit, of the 117,000 students in Tennessee that are identified, 48,000 of those students are identified with specific learning disabilities. Then roughly 26,000 are identified with speech language impairment, and then we have around 13,000 with other health impairment. So 75% of our students with disabilities who are identified on IEPs do not have significant cognitive disabilities. We just need to ensure that they have high expectations, we're intervening sooner, and good quality teaching is occurring across the program. We, in my opinion, and I've been in this 20 years, and my background is special education, I'm a parent of children on IEPs, at times we have set the expectations too low for children once they're identified, and we are hitting that straight on. Special ed supervisors across the state have been very supportive, and we need a partnership with Gen Ed to understand that just because there's a label does not mean there's a cognitive disability that's going to keep our students from achieving greater. And so that's kind of a broad shout to what we're actually trying to do in special ed beyond just the occupational diploma.
Okay, questions, comments?
Joe, I think you mentioned this earlier. You did a good job with your presentation. The item for consideration tomorrow is just for this rule, which enacts the law that was passed last year. And then you and your team are going to take the results of the pilot to help solidify the guidance that the department is going to be placing around this as it's fully implemented.
Correct. Correct.
Good point. Good point.
That is a good point. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, Joey, Kai, thank you, good job, appreciate it. Joey, you're on for the next item, special schools update.
Okay, I have two fact sheets here for you. One for the Tennessee School for the Blind, and then a second document that outlines the Tennessee School for the Deaf as well as the West Tennessee School for the Deaf. And given today's focus was an update on our state special schools, I did invite Alan Melka, who's superintendent of Tennessee School for the Deaf and West Tennessee School for the Deaf, along with Martin Monson, who's the superintendent of Tennessee School for the Blind, to be here with us today, and they are coming in. And they also brought, Alan brought Elaine Alexander, who's our supervisor of instruction at Tennessee School for the Deaf and West Tennessee School for the Deaf, and then Jacob Wallace, director of operations at Tennessee School for the Blind. The fact sheets that you have in front of you give a background of total population of students that are currently in our state special schools, those three settings. There's also a demographic breakdown of the population served, and in the education services and parent services and other programs that are going on as it relates to state outreach, partnering with districts, and the many things that happen through our state special schools. Currently at Tennessee School for the Deaf, there's a design of a new high school that was placed in the budget last year for the state, and there's the current design for a new high school. Currently within our structure, Alan and Martin report to me through the Division of Special Populations. So I provide direct oversight to them in regard to budget. We work together on the budget presentation that we submit to Finance and Administration to then present to the Governor's office. And then after I work with them, I take the information to Commissioner Huffman. I also manage the individual performance plans for both Allen and Martin at both schools. And then within their schools, they have state employees. The state special schools teachers and staff are all state employees. But they have two evaluation models going on. For the state employees that are youth service workers, that our grounds facilities crew, those folks are in the state performance management system, the individual performance plan operation that all state employees go through. The teachers and administrators at the state special schools are part of the team model through the teacher evaluation and the principal evaluation model. We also, just like any other school district, are working through the process of developing our differentiated pay plan. So we have the same option at the state special schools And I work closely with the superintendents to make sure that we're, providing what we need in those areas. As y'all know, I've been in this role since January of last year. I've made it a point when I'm in their regions to visit the schools. I've been at WTSD, at West Tennessee School for the Deaf, three times for visits. Been at the Tennessee School for the Deaf in Knoxville a couple of times, plus attended their graduation, and then I've been at TSD for graduation in multiple meetings with Martin as it relates to various things that come up in the day-to-day operation. The fact sheets basically give you a breakdown of the population and services and things that are occurring at our state special schools, but I asked Alan, because he's been with the state special schools for some time, if he has actually been with the state board in the past, and he said he had not, so I thought it would be good for Alan and Martin to be available for any questions that you might have about the services and the work that's happening in our state special schools. And we appreciate the opportunity to bring an update, because there are good things happening in our schools, and we're in a continuous cycle of improvement to change outcomes.
Okay, questions, or get each of them to just briefly,
Okay. Alan, do you want to come up to share? And then Mark, if you want to follow Alan, that'll be great. So.
I can't speak very long. It's prom time at school tonight, and I need to get back to Crown the Queen, or you will have a lot of adolescent girls after me. I've been with the state for 18 years, and superintendent of the Tennessee School for the Deaf in Knoxville, also superintendent of the West Tennessee School for the Deaf in Jackson. Our school, we focus, obviously, we follow the same curriculum that public schools follow. And so anything you see about that, you see it ours. You did see the demographics of our students. Our students struggle. We work as best we can. But they do struggle, particularly with language arts. So we've been way ahead in that. And we've been teaching language arts across the curriculum for a long, long time, because that's the key issue in deafness. We also have a lot of activities going on with our parents, because educated parents are going to make educated decisions about their children. So we do a lot of work with parents. And finally, outreach. We want to touch the life of every deaf child in the state, either indirectly through programs that we have or directly as they are at school. In a nutshell, that's Tennessee School for the Deaf. I would urge you to come and visit us. We are on a 97-acre campus on the banks of the river, and you're welcome anytime. I'd like to see you. Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Martin Munson. I'm the superintendent at the Tennessee School for the Blind. This year, at the end of this school year, I will have finished my third year at the Tennessee School for the Blind. But it is the Tennessee School for the Blind will be the fourth state special school I have worked at in various states across the country. I've worked in the field for not quite 25 years in the field of educating children who are blind or visually impaired. At our school, we essentially do a lot of the same things that happen at the two deaf schools. We just happen to do them a little bit differently. We have pretty high expectations for our students. This year we have a comparatively small graduating class of 13, and 11 of those will be graduating with a regular state of Tennessee diploma, just like they would have at any other school within the state, which is a pretty fantastic accomplishment, because most of our students come to us 2, 3, 4, 5 years behind academically. The vast majority of them have disabilities in addition to their vision impairment. So we take the kids where they're at when they come to us, and we take them as far as anybody can. And we really do have some pretty good graduation rates for our kids and great outcomes for them when they do leave the school. So we touch quite a number of kids on campus. We also touch students who are visually impaired across the entire state of Tennessee through our outreach programs and our instructional materials resource center. I would say that we probably, in one way, shape, or form, touch the life of every child who is visually impaired, who is legally blind within the state of Tennessee, pretty much in every single county across the state. We are there in either in person or through provision of materials specific to the education of students who are blind or visually impaired. And the school's been around for quite a long time doing that, fulfilling that same role. Since 1844, the school has been located in the Nashville area. And like Alan, anytime any of you would like to come out to the school to see what we do in person, we would be more than happy to take you on a tour, introduce you to some of the kids, let you talk to some of the teachers, some of the students, just so you can kind of get a feel of what we do. We have the same expectations for our students that any school has, and I think we do a great job of educating students who are blind across the state. Thank you.
Question, who makes the decision, or how is the decision made of whether students would come to your school or to the other school as opposed to staying in their local school system? How's that decision made?
Right. All of the students on our campus are on individualized education programs, on IEPs. So it really is a team decision on where the students' needs can best be met, whether that's in the neighborhood school or at the school for the blind. That team is comprised of individuals who know the student well, so their parents are a part of that team. As they get older, the students are also a part of that team. Teachers who have worked with those students are on that team. Everybody comes together. They assess the needs of the students. They look at where those needs can best be met, and then after that process happens, the placement of a student at a location can happen after that process has been completed.
What's your total population?
We are educating 150 students on campus, and we have an outreach department that works with probably another 150 to 200 students across the state.
And how about school with that number?
200 students on campus, 10 people for that, and 50 different programs, and then close behind the comprehensive outreach.
Okay. Questions?
In regards to your funding for each student, when they come from a school district to a residential school, does the school district send money for that student to the residential school?
No, the school district does not send us money. We're funded through the Department of Education. So the school district does not send funding. There's no charge to parents for students to attend our school. We have two groups of students, day students and students that live too far away or residential. There's no cost or transportation to parents to send students to the school, and no charge for the residential students to the districts to send students there. The day students, those local counties transport their own students to and from school each day. But there's no, other than that, there's really no cost to schools to send their students to us, and absolutely no cost to parents.
I guess my next question would have to do with the transition that may have been made in the last, say, 15 years as more school districts are educating more children in their local areas. What impact has that had on these schools and in terms of staffing? And I know it's a very specialized staff that you need that has very specialized training. And where are we finding those kinds of educators? Are we educating them locally in our own state, or are we going outside?
For individuals to teach students who are blind or visually impaired, we have two programs within state. One is at Vanderbilt, and the other one is at Tribeca Nazarene University that can train teachers to be teachers of the visually impaired. We are hiring quite a number of people in-state. We do hire some out-of-state as well, and then offer the training for them.
In both programs that Martin referenced, the Vanderbilt program and the Tribeca program are funded through IDEA discretionary grants to both of those universities, since they are high-need areas within our state for employment.
And what about the student population? How has that varied? Has it changed in the last 15 years?
In the last 15 years, what we are seeing is a lot more students with a lot more comprehensive needs. We're having a lot more students with those secondary, 2 and even 3 or sometimes 4 additional identified disabilities. So we're seeing a student body that has much more comprehensive educational needs over the past 15 years or so.
School for the deaf is about the same. Our numbers of youth have multidisciplinary children.
Okay, other questions? Joey, now, are there other special schools in addition to the ones we just talked about here today?
Those are the only state special schools that are within IDEA that we operate at the state level.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
All right.
Very good. Thanks, Joey. Appreciate it. Good job. Let's, we're a little bit ahead of schedule here. Let's take about 15 minutes break, and we'll come back and address the remainder of the agenda.
Yep.
Okay. Here we go. Accountability and testing policy. Aaron, we're glad that you're here and glad that you didn't disappoint us and not provide some paper. So we've got some more paper here. So.
Yes, sir. Always happy to provide paper.
Good. You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this item is really informational only for y'all. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the potential changes to our accountability system in 2014-15, or when we move to a new assessment system. And then I'll talk a little bit as well about conversations we've had with superintendents about this and how it affects the end-of-course testing policy.